Among the golden sands of the Judean desert, hidden for 2 millennia in ancient caves, lies one of the most mysterious and controversial manuscripts in biblical history. A book so extraordinary that it was deliberately removed from the pages of the Bible as we know it today. This is the Book of Jubilees, also known as the Little Genesis, a text that promises to unveil secrets kept hidden since the foundation of the world. Imagine being present at the moment when Moses ascended Mount Sinai. As recorded in Exodus 24, he remained on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, enveloped in divine glory. We all know the story of the tablets of the law that he received. But what if there was more? What if during those 40 days, God revealed not only the 10 Commandments, but profound secrets about creation, angels, and the fate of humanity? The Book of Jubilees claims exactly that. According to its own testimony, it was not Moses who directly wrote its words, but the angel of the presence, a celestial being specially appointed by God, who dictated to Moses a story that begins with creation and extends to that moment on Sinai. A story filled with details and revelations not found in any other sacred text. The preservation of this book seems miraculous. While countless ancient texts have been lost to the sands of time, the Book of Jubilees survived, hidden in the caves of Qumran alongside the Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1947, when these texts were discovered, the world was shocked. There lay not just one copy of the book, but multiple fragments in different languages, testifying to its significance for ancient communities. But here lies one of the greatest mysteries. Why did only the Ethiopian Orthodox Church maintain this book in its sacred canon? Of all the Christian churches spread across the globe, only this ancient African community preserved the Book of Jubilees as inspired scripture. What did they know that the rest of Christendom chose to forget? The history of the Ethiopian Church takes us back to apostolic times. In the book of Acts, chapter 8, we read about the encounter between Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, a moment that marked the beginning of Christianity in Africa. This ancient lineage of faith, which dates back to the early days of the church, kept alive a knowledge that other traditions chose to suppress. The very title of the book, Jubilees, points to an understanding of time that transcends our common perception. Based on the biblical concept of the year of Jubilee, every 49 years, the book presents history as a precise sequence of divine cycles, each carrying its own meaning and purpose within God's plan. But the most intriguing aspect of the Book of Jubilees is its claim of direct divine origin. The text asserts that it was dictated by an angel of the presence, a special category of celestial being that serves directly before the throne of God. This was not an ordinary angel, but a messenger specifically designated to reveal divine secrets to Moses. The manuscript tells us that this angel not only dictated the story, but also showed Moses visions of the past and the future. It was as if the prophet were watching a divine movie, witnessing the creation of the world, the Garden of Eden, the fall of the angels, the flood, everything in vivid detail that goes far beyond the account in Genesis. What makes this book particularly fascinating is how it fills in the gaps that have always intrigued readers of the Bible. Why did God choose Israel? What was life like before the flood? What is the true nature of angels? Where did evil come from? The Book of Jubilees offers detailed answers to these and many other questions that the biblical text merely suggests. However, this expanded knowledge came at a price. The book was deemed too dangerous to be included in the canonical Bible. Its revelations about the celestial realms, its detailed prophecies, its precise chronology, all of this was judged as potentially disturbing to the faith of ordinary believers. Perhaps the most provocative aspect of the Book of Jubilees is its insistence that there is a divine order permeating all of creation, a harmony between heaven and earth, between time and eternity, between the visible and the invisible. This is not just a collection of ancient stories, but a key to understanding the very fabric of reality as planned by God. The manuscript challenges our traditional understanding of the scriptures by presenting a narrative that intertwines the natural with the supernatural, the historical with the prophetic, the earthly with the celestial. Its pages invite us to contemplate a universe far more vast and complex than we have ever imagined. And so, this ancient text continues to intrigue us. Its revelations, preserved through the millennia, seem more relevant today than ever. In a world desperately seeking to understand its place in the divine plan, the Book of Jubilees offers a unique and challenging perspective that makes us question everything we thought we knew about our sacred history. The year is 363 AD. In the city of Laodicea, a group of religious leaders gathers to make one of the most controversial decisions in the history of Christianity. The atmosphere is tense. In the hands of these men rests the fate of various sacred texts, including a particularly disturbing manuscript, the Book of Jubilees. The Council of Laodicea was not merely an administrative meeting. It was a decisive moment for the young Christian faith, which struggled to maintain its doctrinal purity in a world rife with heresies and false teachings. As the Book of Proverbs reminds us, in the multitude of counselors there is safety. But what happens when these counselors decide that certain truths are too dangerous to be known? The decision to ban the Book of Jubilees was not made lightly. The text contained revelations that the church leaders considered potentially dangerous for the faith of ordinary believers. It wasn't a question of falsehood. Paradoxically, it was the extraordinary nature of its revelations that most concerned the elders of the church. Among the most alarming reasons for its exclusion was the content deemed too dangerous. The book spoke of a complex celestial hierarchy, of interactions between angels and humans, of hidden knowledge, and of a cosmology that went far beyond the simplicity of the text of Genesis. In a world where the church was battling Gnosticism and other mystical heresies, these revelations seemed dangerously close to the kind of esoteric knowledge they were trying to combat. The apparent contradictions with the accepted text of Genesis represented another serious point of concern. While the first book of the Bible presents a direct and succinct account of creation, the Jubilees expand this narrative with surprising details. The issue was not whether these details were true or false, but whether their revelation would be beneficial for the church as a whole. The book presented additional information about creation that went far beyond the traditional biblical account. It spoke of the creation of angels on the first day, described different categories of celestial beings, and detailed aspects of creation that found no parallel in any other sacred text. This expansion of the creation narrative raised delicate questions about the nature of divine revelation. One of the most controversial aspects was the different calendar presented in the Book of Jubilees. Instead of the traditional lunar calendar used by the Jews, the book proposed a solar calendar of 364 days, divided into perfect weeks. This was not just a matter of mathematics. It was a fundamental redefinition of sacred time that could affect the celebration of all religious festivals. The angelic hierarchy described in the book was particularly problematic. While the Bible mentions angels in general terms, the Jubilees presented a complex celestial structure with different orders of angels, each with specific functions in the administration of the universe. This level of detail about the spiritual world was considered potentially disturbing for the faithful. The manuscript also contained revelations about the spiritual world that the church leaders deemed beyond the comprehension of the average believer. It detailed interactions between angels and humans, described spiritual battles in the heavenly realms, and offered insights into the nature of evil that could easily be misinterpreted. The decision to exclude the book reflected a deep concern for the preservation of truth in its most accessible form. The leaders feared that these complex revelations could confuse the faithful or lead to dangerous interpretations. As it is written in Ecclesiastes, there is a time for every purpose under heaven. Perhaps this knowledge was not appropriate for that moment in the history of the Church. The process of banishment raised profound questions about the nature of divine revelation. If this knowledge truly came from God, as many believed, why did it need to be suppressed? The answer seemed to lie in the very nature of spiritual knowledge. Not all truth is suitable for all times and all people. The information contained in the Book of Jubilees about fallen angels and their role in the corruption of humanity was particularly sensitive. At a time when the Church was fighting against occult practices and pagan superstitions, these detailed revelations about spiritual beings could inadvertently fuel the kind of fascination with the supernatural that they were trying to combat. The proposed calendar in the book represented more than just a simple change in the counting of time. It was a complete reconfiguration of the sacred year that could cause serious divisions in the Church. At a time when unity was crucial for the survival of the faith, such controversy seemed unnecessarily dangerous. The question that echoed through the halls of the council was disturbing. What did this book contain that needed to be kept from the eyes of the faithful? The revelations about celestial worlds, detailed prophecies, and precise chronologies, all were judged as potentially disturbing to the faith of common believers. The legacy of this decision continues to intrigue us today. While most churches followed the decree of Laodicea, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church retained the Book of Jubilees in its sacred canon. This unique preservation leads us to question, what ancient wisdom did this African church manage to maintain that the rest of Christianity chose to abandon? The controversy of the banishment of the Book of Jubilees reminds us that the history of faith is also a history of difficult choices. Sometimes, the preservation of truth requires decisions that may seem contradictory at first glance. Knowledge, like a double-edged sword, can both protect and harm, depending on the hands that wield it. Beyond the familial account in Genesis, the Book of Jubilees reveals a completely new dimension of creation, a story that challenges our understanding of the very beginning of the universe. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, states the sacred text we know. But what happened before this beginning? What existed in the moments preceding the first creative word? The revelations about the first day are astonishing. Even before light was called into existence, God created the superior angels, beings of pure light and divine purpose. They were not mere messengers, but cosmic administrators, each designated for a specific function in the grand symphony of creation. Among them were the angels of presence, celestial beings who continuously stood before the throne of God, witnessing and recording each act of creation. The revealed hierarchy of angels is breathtaking. There were the angels of fire, guardians of the primordial energy of creation, the angels of winds, who directed the atmospheric currents, the angels of seasons, who would maintain the rhythm of time yet to be created. Each angelic order was established with a specific purpose, forming an intricate web of celestial administration that would uphold all of creation. Among these celestial orders stood the Watchers. These extraordinary beings were designated as guardians of divine order, observers of celestial and earthly patterns. Their original purpose was noble, to supervise creation and ensure that each element remained in its designated function. They were the eyes of God upon creation, witnesses to the unfolding of his divine plan. The Book of Jubilees reveals that the very structure of time was established before the creation of the physical world. The cycles of days, months, and years were first inscribed on celestial tablets, creating a pattern that the material universe would follow. This temporal order was not arbitrary, but a reflection of God's own nature, a God of order and purpose. When we arrive at the account of physical creation, the details become even more fascinating. Each creative word did not merely bring something into existence, it established laws and standards that would govern creation forever. When God said, "Let there be light," it was not just physical light that emerged, but the entire structure of energy and matter was established. The manuscript reveals surprising aspects about the Garden of Eden that go beyond the Genesis account. The garden was not merely a physical location on earth, but a point of intersection between heaven and earth, a place where the material and the spiritual met in perfect harmony. It was a microcosm of what all creation was meant to become. The true nature of the tree of knowledge of good and evil gains a deeper dimension in the Book of Jubilees. It was not just an ordinary tree with special properties, but a portal of revelation, a divine test carefully designed. The fruit of this tree contained not only moral knowledge, but an understanding that could fundamentally alter the nature of whoever consumed it. The text details how each element of creation was placed under the supervision of different angelic orders. The angels of fire oversaw the most basic elements of matter. The angels of waters ensured the correct flow of seas and rivers. The angels of seasons maintained the rhythm of natural cycles. It was a complex and harmonious celestial administration. Particularly fascinating is the revelation about the creation of human beings. The Book of Jubilees explains that before forming Adam from the dust of the earth, God consulted with the angels of presence, not because he needed advice, but to establish a pattern of cooperation between the celestial and terrestrial realms that would continue throughout history. The manuscript reveals that the very language of creation, the words used by God to call things into existence, was preserved and transmitted to Adam. This sacred language was not merely a means of communication, but carried within it the creative power, an echo of the divine word that brought all things into being. The order and harmony of the original creation are described in striking detail. Each creature knew its place and purpose. Animals communicated with Adam in the universal language of creation. There was no conflict between species, no fear, no death. It was a perfect reflection of the harmony that existed in the celestial realms. The Book of Jubilees explains that the very concept of time was established as a sacred dance between the celestial and the terrestrial. The movements of celestial bodies, the seasons of the year, the cycles of life, all choreographed in a perfect symphony that reflected the glory of the Creator. The fall was not merely a moral tragedy, but a cosmic rupture that affected all levels of creation. When Adam and Eve disobeyed, it was not just their relationship with God that was impacted. The entire structure of reality suffered a distortion. The original harmony between heaven and earth was broken. The manuscript reveals that even after the fall, vestiges of the original order remained. The angels continued their administrative functions, albeit with greater difficulty. The sacred language of creation survived in fragments through the generations. The celestial patterns continued to influence earthly cycles, even if in a less perfect manner. This expanded vision of creation helps us understand why the Book of Jubilees was considered so significant and so dangerous. Its revelations are not only about the past, but offer a window into understanding the true nature of reality. The relationship between the visible and the invisible, the temporal and the eternal. Among all the revelations contained in the Book of Jubilees, perhaps none is as disturbing as the story of the fallen angels. The account begins where Genesis 6:1-2 only briefly mentions, "When human beings began to multiply on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Book of Jubilees expands this narrative with astonishing details about who these sons of God were. They were the Watchers, those very angels created on the first day, originally designated to be guardians of creation. Their fall was not an impulsive act, but a deliberate decision that would forever alter the course of human history. These celestial beings, endowed with free will just like humans, began to observe the beauty of the daughters of men with an interest that transcended their original mission. The manuscript reveals that 200 of these watchers made a solemn pact among themselves, vowing to descend to earth to take these women as wives. This forbidden pact was sealed on Mount Hermon, a specific geographical detail that adds a tangible historical dimension to the narrative. Semjaza, the leader of these angels, initially expressed concern about this plan. He feared that, as the leader, he would bear sole responsibility for this sin before God. To ensure that all would equally share the burden of responsibility, he made the 200 watchers take a mutual oath, binding their eternal fates to this fateful decision. The description in the Book of Jubilees regarding the birth of the Nephilim is much more detailed than the brief verse in Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The text reveals that these hybrid beings were not only enormous in stature, but possessed abilities that surpassed both human and angelic qualities. According to the manuscript, the Nephilim grew to become giants 3,000 cubits tall, creatures with insatiable appetites who began to devour not only the fruits of the earth, but also animals, humans, and each other. This physical corruption was merely a reflection of a much deeper moral decay that had been introduced into creation. But the true horror lay not just in the existence of these hybrid beings. The Book of Jubilees reveals that the Watchers began to teach humanity knowledge that should have remained secret. Azazel, one of the leaders, taught men the art of making swords, knives, shields, and armor. He taught them about the metals of the earth and how to work with them, about precious jewels and how to adorn themselves. Other angels transmitted equally forbidden knowledge. Semjaza taught enchantments and the cutting of roots. Armaros taught how to break enchantments. Barakiel taught astrology. Kokabel taught the signs of the stars. Zekiel taught the signs of lightning. Each piece of knowledge transmitted further distanced humanity from its original innocence and drew it closer to its destruction. The women were not merely passive recipients of this corruption. The manuscript details how they learned the art of cosmetics, adornment, and seduction. They learned about herbs and enchantments, potions and sorcery. This knowledge, which might seem innocuous in modern eyes, was regarded as a perversion of the natural beauty that God had created. Corruption spread like a plague across the earth. Men began to create increasingly deadly weapons, practice sorcery and divination, and seek power through supernatural means. Women learned to alter their appearance with cosmetics and jewelry, straying from the original simplicity of creation. Human society transformed into something unrecognizable in the eyes of its creator. The Book of Jubilees reveals that this transmission of forbidden knowledge was as grave as the very union between angels and humans. It was not merely a matter of miscegenation between celestial and terrestrial beings, but the premature introduction of knowledge that humanity was not prepared to handle responsibly. The consequence of this corruption was the rise of violence and wickedness on the earth. The text explains that the Nephilim not only terrorized humans with their physical strength, but also corrupted them by their example of violence and greed. The earth became filled with blood and injustice, echoing the words of Genesis 6:5. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The manuscript details how this situation led to the Great Flood. The corruption had become so profound and widespread that only a total purification could cleanse the earth. The Watchers were imprisoned in the depths of the earth, awaiting final judgment, while their offspring, the Nephilim, were destroyed in the flood. But even after the flood, the legacy of this forbidden knowledge remained. The Book of Jubilees suggests that many of the occult practices and esoteric knowledge that persisted through the centuries have their origins in this ancient transmission of celestial secrets. Once revealed, this knowledge could not be completely erased from human memory. The story of the fallen angels in the Book of Jubilees serves as a warning about the dangers of seeking knowledge beyond the limits established by God. It demonstrates how the thirst for power and knowledge, when not tempered by wisdom and reverence for God, can lead to the destruction not only of individuals, but of entire civilizations. After the flood, when the waters receded and a new era of humanity began, the Book of Jubilees reveals a divine system of chronology that transcends our common understanding of time. This system was not merely a way to count days and years, but a reflection of the very celestial order established at creation. The concept of Jubilee, from which the book derives its name, is grounded in a sacred cycle of 49 years. As revealed in Leviticus 25:8, you shall count 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the days of the 7 weeks of years shall be 49 years. However, the Book of Jubilees expands this concept into something much deeper and more comprehensive. Each Jubilee represents not only a temporal milestone, but a complete cycle within the divine plan. The number 49 was not chosen by chance. 7 times 7, perfection multiplied by itself. The 50th year, the year of the Jubilee itself, marks a moment of liberation, restoration, and new beginnings. It reflects the pattern established in creation, where God worked for 6 days and rested on the 7th. The manuscript reveals that from creation until the time it was given to Moses, exactly 49 complete Jubilees had passed. This precise chronology was not merely a reckoning of time, but a demonstration of divine sovereignty over human history. Each significant event was precisely positioned within these sacred cycles. The actual ages of the patriarchs, one of the most intriguing aspects of the Book of Genesis, gains a new perspective in the Book of Jubilees. The text not only confirms these long lifespans, Adam living 930 years, Methuselah reaching 969 years, but also explains the divine purpose behind this initial longevity. It was necessary for the first humans to live so long to establish the foundations of civilization and transmit divine knowledge through generations. The calendar revealed in the Book of Jubilees is surprisingly precise and mathematical. With 364 days divided into 52 perfect weeks, this solar calendar differed significantly from the lunar calendar traditionally used by the Jews. Each year was divided into 4 equal parts of 91 days, with each part marking a season. This structure ensured that religious festivals always fell on the same days of the week, year after year. The importance of this chronological knowledge transcended mere timekeeping. The manuscript reveals that the very rhythm of creation, the flow of the seasons, the movement of celestial bodies, all were synchronized in a precisely orchestrated cosmic dance. The festivals and celebrations were not merely memorials of past events, but alignments with celestial patterns established since the foundation of the world. The book details how each patriarch was born, lived, and died at precisely determined moments within these sacred cycles. Abraham was not born at a random moment in history. His birth marked the beginning of a new jubilee. The same pattern repeated with Isaac, Jacob, and the other patriarchs. Each significant life in the divine plan was chronologically aligned with these celestial cycles. This chronological precision served a greater purpose than simple historical remembrance. The Book of Jubilees suggests that understanding these cycles was fundamental to grasping prophecies and the unfolding of the divine plan. Time was not viewed as a linear sequence of events, but as a cyclical pattern reflecting deeper spiritual truths. The manuscript reveals that each jubilee not only marked the end of one cycle and the beginning of another, but also brought specific revelations about God's character and purposes. Some jubilees were marked by judgment, others by mercy, and still others by a progressive revelation of divine truth. It was a system that demonstrated both God's justice and grace at work throughout time. The counting of time in the Book of Jubilees also served as a prophetic tool. By understanding the patterns established in previous cycles, it was possible to discern what was to come. This was not about divination, but about comprehending divine patterns set in place since creation. It was knowledge that allowed the faithful to align themselves with God's timing, not just human timing. The 364-day calendar presented significant practical and spiritual advantages. With 52 complete weeks, it ensured that the Sabbath, the sacred day of rest, always fell on the same day. This created a perfect harmony between sacred and secular time, between celestial cycles and religious observances on earth. The significance of this chronological knowledge is revealed in the very purpose of the book. It was essential for God's people to understand not only the events of sacred history, but their precise position within divine time. This understanding allowed for a deeper synchronization with celestial purposes, an alignment with the very rhythm of creation. The Book of Jubilees presents time as a divine tapestry, where each thread represents a moment precisely positioned in God's plan. History was not seen as a series of random events, but as an intricate and meaningful design, with each moment connected to all others in a divinely ordered pattern. This chronological system also served as a constant reminder of God's sovereignty over time. In a world where pagan cultures worshipped the sun, moon, and stars, the Jubilee calendar demonstrated that these celestial bodies were merely servants of the true God, markers of a time he established from the beginning. The revelation of hidden pacts in the Book of Jubilees opens a window to dimensions previously unknown in the relationship between God and humanity. Beyond the well-known covenants recorded in canonical scriptures, the manuscript reveals a series of additional alliances that shape our understanding of sacred history. The covenant with Noah, for example, gains depth and complexity in the Book of Jubilees. While Genesis speaks of the rainbow as a sign of God's promise never to destroy the earth with water again, the manuscript unveils further aspects of this sacred agreement. Noah received specific instructions on how future generations should live, including prohibitions against consuming blood and regulations regarding justice and morality that were to govern the new post-Diluvian era. This expanded Noachian covenant established not only promises from God to humanity, but also specific obligations of humankind to their Creator. The text elaborates on how Noah instructed his sons regarding these ordinances, laying the groundwork for what would later be known as the Noachide laws, a universal moral code that, according to Jewish tradition, applies to all humanity. The manuscript reveals that even before Abraham, there were pacts established with earlier patriarchs that paved the way for the great Abrahamic covenant. Each generation inherited not only the promises of their predecessors, but also additional revelations that expanded and deepened the relationship between God and his chosen people. The covenant with Abraham, so fundamental to the Judeo-Christian faith, is presented in the Book of Jubilees with surprising details that complement the account in Genesis. The text reveals that when God called Abraham to leave Ur of the Chaldeans, It was not merely a call to a new land, but a restoration of sacred knowledge that had been lost since the days of Noah. Abraham received not only promises regarding his descendants and land, but also revelations about celestial cycles, sacred times, and the true language of creation. The manuscript suggests that before the confusion of languages at Babel, there existed a universal sacred language, the same one Adam spoke in the Garden of Eden. This language was not just a means of communication, but carried the essence of divine truth. The Book of Jubilees reveals that the dispersion at Babel was not merely a confusion of tongues, but a divine protective measure. The text suggests that humanity was on the verge of discovering celestial secrets for which it was not prepared, reminiscent of the forbidden knowledge transmitted by the watchers before the flood. The manuscript details a series of smaller pacts made with various patriarchs, each contributing to the progressive development of divine revelation. These pacts did not contradict the main covenants, but complemented them, providing structure and direction for each generation in its own historical context. The preservation of these pacts through generations was not merely a matter of oral memory or written records. The Book of Jubilees reveals that certain families were specifically designated as guardians of different aspects of sacred knowledge. This system of preservation ensured that nothing was lost, even during periods of widespread apostasy. The text also reveals that each covenant was connected to specific times in the sacred calendar. Certain alliances were established at precise moments of the year, creating spiritual connections that would cyclically repeat. This temporal pattern served as a perpetual memorial of divine acts in history. The Book of Jubilees presents these pacts not as isolated events, but as part of a unified divine plan unfolding through the generations. Each covenant built upon the previous ones, progressively revealing more of God's nature and purposes for humanity. The Book of Jubilees contains prophecies that go far beyond those found in canonical texts, revealing an extraordinary dimension of the divine plan for Israel and all humanity. These predictions, considered too dangerous to be included in the traditional Bible, offer a unique vision of the future and the role of angels in human history. The prophecies about Israel's future begin with a surprising revelation about the divine purpose in choosing this people. The manuscript reveals that even before the creation of the world, God had determined that among all nations, Israel would be his special portion. This choice was not arbitrary, but part of a cosmic plan that involved both the earthly and the heavenly realms. The prophetic text details how Israel's history would be marked by cycles of obedience and rebellion, each cycle lasting exactly one jubilee. These periods were not merely temporal markers, but represented specific phases in the spiritual development of the chosen people. Each cycle would bring its own trials and revelations, gradually shaping the nation for its ultimate purpose. The war between good and evil is presented in the Book of Jubilees not only as a terrestrial conflict, but as a cosmic battle that began in the heavens and continues to unfold on earth. The manuscript reveals that each nation has angels assigned to guide it, but only Israel is under the direct supervision of God. This celestial structure explains many of the historical conflicts between Israel and neighboring nations. According to the text, angels are not mere observers of human history, but active participants in its unfolding. Every significant event on earth has its counterpart in the heavenly realm. The physical battles fought by Israel were reflections of much greater spiritual conflicts occurring in celestial spheres. This revelation gives new meaning to the struggles and victories of the chosen people. Particularly notable is the prophecy about the last days, which the Book of Jubilees presents in both specific and symbolic terms. The manuscript speaks of a period of great tribulation lasting exactly 7 jubilees, during which humanity would face unprecedented trials. This time would be marked by signs in the heavens and on earth, with the angels themselves intervening in visible ways in human history. The prophetic text reveals that during this final period, the hidden knowledge transmitted by the watchers before the flood would resurface in a transformed manner. Humanity would reach levels of knowledge and technological power that resembled ancient magic, but this time as part of the divine plan for the last days. This revelation sheds interesting light on the technological advancements of our own era. The prophecies in the Book of Jubilees speak of a final restoration that transcends a mere return to a previous state. The manuscript describes a complete transformation of reality, where the celestial and earthly kingdoms would draw near to each other again, reminiscent of the original condition in the Garden of Eden. This new era would be marked by perfect harmony between celestial cycles and life on earth. Israel's role in this cosmic drama is described in surprisingly detailed terms. The chosen people would not only serve as an example for other nations, but also as a catalyst for the transformation of all creation. The prophecies speak of a moment when the sacred knowledge preserved by Israel would be crucial for humanity's survival during the last days. The manuscript reveals that the festivals and celebrations established by God were not just memorials of the past, but prophetic rehearsals of future events. Each festival contained a pattern that would repeat on a cosmic scale in the last days. This understanding gave new meaning to religious observances and explained why it was so important to maintain them at the exact times established by the sacred calendar. The prophecies concerning the end times are presented in a precise structure of jubilees, each period marking a specific phase of the divine plan. The manuscript reveals that just as creation occurred in 6 days, followed by a day of rest, human history would follow a similar pattern of 6,000 years, followed by a millennium of rest and restoration. The Book of Jubilees explains why these prophecies were deemed too dangerous for general knowledge. The text suggests that certain revelations should only be understood in their proper times, as premature knowledge could lead to misinterpretations and hasty actions. This is one of the reasons why many of these prophecies were suppressed from the canonical Bible. The manuscript also reveals that each generation would receive only the portion of prophetic understanding necessary for its time. Certain prophecies would remain sealed until the appropriate moment for their revelation, following a divine pattern of progressive illumination through the cycles of the Jubilees. The prophecies contained in the book were not limited to future events, but included revelations about the purpose and destiny of each human soul. The text suggests that each person has a specific role in the grand cosmic drama, even if they are not aware of it. This knowledge was considered particularly sensitive, as it could be misinterpreted or used harmfully. The most controversial aspect of these prophecies was their revelation about the ongoing interaction between angels and humans throughout history. Unlike the fall of the Watchers, these future interactions would be part of the divine plan, occurring under divine direction and control. This perspective challenged the traditional understanding of the separation between the celestial and terrestrial realms. The Book of Jubilees, even though excluded from the traditional biblical canon, has left an indelible mark on the development of Judeo-Christian faith. Its influence can be detected in various New Testament texts, where subtle references to its teachings appear at crucial moments in the gospel narrative. When the Apostle Paul writes about principalities and powers in heavenly places, he echoes the complex angelic hierarchy described in Jubilees. The letter of Jude makes a direct reference to the tradition of fallen angels, a narrative that finds its most detailed expression in this forbidden book. These hidden citations are not mere coincidences. They indicate that the early Christians were familiar with these ancient traditions. In the canonical texts, we find reflections of the truths preserved in Jubilees. The concept of spiritual warfare, the idea of guardian angels of nations, the significance of sacred temporal cycles, all these themes appear in the Bible more subtly, like echoes of a deeper knowledge that has been partially suppressed. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which has kept the Book of Jubilees as part of its sacred canon, has developed a unique understanding of sacred history. Its liturgy, traditions, and worldview are profoundly influenced by this ancient text. This preservation was no accident. It reflects an ancient wisdom that recognized the value of this knowledge for future generations. The manuscript remains relevant today because it addresses fundamental questions that still intrigue us: the origin of evil, the nature of sacred time, the divine purpose in human history. Its revelations about the interaction between the celestial and terrestrial realms provide a unique perspective on contemporary events. The suppression of the Book of Jubilees did not fully erase its impact. Throughout the centuries, its truths continued to influence religious thought, even if indirectly. Modern scholars increasingly recognize its importance in understanding the development of early Judaism and Christianity. The ultimate legacy of the Book of Jubilees lies not only in its specific revelations, but in its central message. There is a divine order that permeates all creation, from the greatest to the least, from the celestial to the earthly. This fundamental truth continues to resonate through the ages, challenging us to look beyond the surface of reality. Beloved, we have just delved into one of the greatest mysteries of biblical history. The Book of Jubilees challenges us to expand our understanding of sacred history and makes us question, how much more is there for us to learn about God's purposes? Have you ever stopped to think about why certain truths have been hidden throughout history? How would our faith look if we had access to all the knowledge that our spiritual ancestors possessed? Now is the time to deepen your spiritual understanding. Why not start studying the scriptures with a fresh perspective, seeking out hidden connections and deeper meanings? If this content has touched your heart and sparked your thirst for more knowledge, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with those you love. Sometimes, a simple message can be the beginning of a transformative spiritual journey. Click the subscribe button now and turn on the notification bell. Every week we bring you content like this, revealing the profound mysteries of the scriptures that can transform your spiritual life. And don't forget to leave a comment. Which revelation from the Book of Jubilees impacted you the most? Your participation enriches our community and helps us create even more relevant content for your life. We'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue to uncover the hidden mysteries of God's Word. May the peace of the Lord be with you all.